Everybody, how are you? And thank you for hanging out tonight, right? We are, of course, North Philly Project, and we present the Wellness Chronicles. We were supposed to come on Monday. We did a special edition and postponed it and brought it on to our Wednesday. So on your hump day, you get to hang out with us and we get to hang out with you. So again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking the time. I know some of you are just coming back from Bible studies and other things, work days. And so we appreciate the time. Remember, these are conversations to be shared because these are community conversations exploring life in marginalized communities. And for me, especially my North Philly, and how to ignite social change in those communities. We talk about issues, but we bring resolve. We talk about issues, but we bring solutions and we bring answers. It's about building the community that is in our hearts, that which we desire, but also deserve. And so we come on to have these communities to ignite our conversations, right? So we can ignite social change. And we want to have the conversations and continue to have the conversations. We want to talk about the things that impact our lives. And so I'm Aaron Wells. I am the executive director of North Philly Project, and this is what we do. So remember, it's a special edition. It's a special edition. We usually come on Mondays at 7, but we moved it for this week to Wednesday. So thank you for your time. Remember to share on your social media platforms, whether that's Facebook Live, go to North Philly Project's Facebook Live. Please like the page. You'll be able to get all of our conversations, and then go to our YouTube channel. We're trying to get 10,000 subscribers so we can then go to 20,000 subscribers. So please make sure that you're liking our Facebook channel, our Facebook page, and going to our YouTube channel. I have a very special guest tonight, a new friend, a new community partner. And this is Florence Penny McDonald, the Executive Director of Community Forgiveness and Restoration. And Penny is going to engage in conversation. There's a possibility we may have a Maynard Merriman sighting, our youth director at North Philly Project, who has lived experience and loves to be able to share from that perspective of lived experience as we talk about tonight's topic. And so we're going to have Penny introduce herself and talk a little bit about what she's doing in a few, just a couple of seconds, and then we'll engage. This is a part 2 conversation. It's a part 2 conversation. So if you're coming on and you joined us for part 1, make sure you come into the chat. Let us know that you're there so we can say hello. Make sure that you make your comments, questions. It's all about community, right? So you get to engage in this conversation. We was talking about the economic reality of Philadelphia and how we got here, looking at statistics about our city, which we grabbed from research, evidence research from things like Pew Charitable Trust, their State of the City, which comes out every year. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia Community Assessment, the Department of Health of Philadelphia Community Assessments. There are so many writings and so many articles, so much research about where we are and our history. Oftentimes we ignore it as we try to understand what's happening in community. And one thing we understand that poverty is an enduring problem in Philadelphia. Here are the statistics we talked about last week. 25.7%, over a quarter of the city is dealing with living in poverty. And we're talking about the 6th largest city in the country. And out of the 10 largest cities in the country, Philly's one of the poorest. And that's something that we have to reckon with and recognize. We understand that 37%, so that's a third, under 18, and about 400,000 people live below the national poverty line. And we'll talk about how that connects to tonight's conversation. We also understand that 48% of Philadelphians struggle to make ends meet. We understand that our Latino brothers and sisters in community are almost at 40%, but we as Black people, 30%, a third, again, almost a third. These are deplorable numbers, and yet the city moves on. And as we talk about safety, as we talk about crime, as we talk about violence, as we talk about things that are taught, practiced, reported, we don't hear a lot about poverty. We don't hear a lot about how poverty is connected to all of um, the social ills, all the social categories in our city. And so we have to be able to bring this issue to the forefront, or we'll only put band-aids on things. We'll never be able to perform the surgery that would change our city. I believe in the promise of Philadelphia. I believe in the potential of Philadelphia, but I also believe we got to have real conversations. And so one of the conversations I want to have tonight is with the executive director of Community Forgiveness and Restoration. Welcome, Penny, to the platform. Glad you came. How are you today? Tell us a little bit about Penny and tell us about the organization.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. And again, my name is Florence Penny McDonald. I'm known as Penny McDonald. Um, for the past 20 years, I've been going in Greaterford SEI/Phoenix prison and other institutions to work with inmates on different initiatives. Um, One of our initiatives was the scholarship program, where we had a Latino brother who was incarcerated, and he started a program. Where he collected money. He, had fundraisers and so forth to give out money to kids who were in school who had possibly gone the wrong way, and now they were on the right track, or either their fathers were incarcerated. So the employer that I had was a state rep. We would go around and give the scholarships out. However, and then we had a FACT program, Fathers and Children Together. So I was one of the founders for that program, where we connected fathers and their children. But presently, I am the executive director over an organization called Community Forgiveness and Restoration. And that's a faith-based reentry program where we work with returning citizens. And we actually go inside the prison to start the relationship, and then we continue it when they come out.
Penny, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. You bring experience, you bring professionalism, you bring knowledge to the platform, the conversation tonight. So let's dig in a little bit. Also, before we do that, I want everybody to know Penny has a lot that she hasn't talked about. So you'll be hopefully seeing Penny again in some other conversations, because there are other areas of her professional life that we want to tap into. So we'll talk about that at some other time. So
Mhm.
Penny, I want to start here. Something I mentioned last week. I try to give the information that drives the conversations,
Mhm.
and for people to understand what that foundational truth is. So when we talk about criminal justice policies, um, and we're looking at specifically at Philadelphia, Philadelphia has the fourth highest incarceration rate in the city. I mean, excuse me, in the country.
Mhm.
Um, Memphis, New Orleans, St. Louis, and all of these cities with urban issues, urban plight, urban both deterioration, but also gentrification, which takes us into a whole nother realm of conversation, but it has to be included. Philly's the fourth highest, and yet we're the sixth largest city in the country. And
Mhm.
so, if that's the case, and it is, then we also have to understand that with our criminal justice issues and policies, um, what that looks like economically and how this ties into the economy of our city. One of the things we looked at was that many individuals and families in Philadelphia incur criminal justice debt. And so
Mhm.
when we're looking at a city that has so much based on its tax revenue, we're
Mhm.
literally taken away from the tax base because of criminal justice policies, where we're
Mhm.
not even allowing men and women as returning citizens to live in society economically because of
Mhm.
all of the costs that are so attached to that. And so, as we're talking about these things, Penny, with your experience, um, what does that look like for a returning citizen? What is the real the real landscape for returning citizens? Um, what is the real landscape for them with financial costs coming out, probation, parole, trying to find a place to stay, transportation, childcare?
Mhm.
Um, um, what does that look like for them, Penny?
Well, it's pretty blight for a person to come home, for a person who's been incarcerated perhaps 30 years. Our organization works with people in those situations coming home. But we've had a gentleman who came out after serving 30 years. His whole family had passed away, and he didn't have the wherewithal to get a job. It was a good thing he was able to go to a halfway house, but it's pretty blight, and it's unrealistic to just allow a person or I won't use the word to allow, but after a person served their time and they come home with no hope of a job, no no hope of even a place to live, but just to allow them to serve 30 years and then just let them go. So the situation is I would say is blight for a returning citizen. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we look at the economy in Philadelphia, we look at the criminal justice system, and we look at the fact that to incarcerate a person, and we can incarcerate a person with his first offense. We send him to jail. It costs about $48,000 just to incarcerate that person, to take care of them for a year. And then when you look at the overhead, you look at the people who are maintaining the prisons. You look at the of all of what it takes to take care of a person who may be sick. So you're looking at 48,000, 10 plus, you may be looking at another $50,000. So that's like almost $100,000 for some people. When they could come home and and because of their age, if they're a senior or what have you, they could come home and they could get into a housing situation. I know in Philadelphia, in the Section 8 and in the Housing Authority, for so long, they didn't let returning citizens be a part of their housing authority, be able to live there, which is an injustice, because we say we don't want them to commit another crime, but in order for some folks to live, their mind reverts back to the original thought of committing a crime. So I think the way the system is being ran now, it clearly does not make sense, and the lawmakers were not thinking of the returning citizen or even the person that went inside who is incarcerated. So in terms of the economic status for the people who are poor, I think it's really sad, and it's unjust. And then also when you look at the criminal justice system, when they go before the judge, people who don't have money, they get longer terms. They're not represented well. The evidence doesn't show forth. But then sometimes when you look at the other hue, people who may have jobs, who can pay for good lawyers, they perhaps don't go in. They're not going in, and they're not being incarcerated, but they're going to rehabs. I've seen it myself. I went into the courtroom and I saw a person of color go straight to jail, first offense, and then I saw a person that came behind him from another hue, and the judge said, "This is my third time sending you to a rehab." So economically things are different. Is some injustice going on because of color, because of where you live, and who's benefiting from this? Mm-hmm. Big businessmen are benefiting from it. And I'll just say this and I'll quit. Because I work for a legislator, there were talk with the lawmakers of closing one of the prisons down, and the representative, he was very upset because he said that it's going to affect the jobs in his community, not caring the effect of people being incarcerated, young people being incarcerated for years and years, that's in prison. And when they, so you can understand what I'm trying to say.
I sure do. And I thank you for that, Penny. Oftentimes, because again, the cell is safety, the cell is public safety, public security, crime. We understand that. And what's lost in that, not spoken in that, is the business of crime, mm-hmm. which is not just from those who are deemed criminals, but from the very system that is designed to punish and house crime. It is set up to make money. Mm-hmm. And so we get into the 13th Amendment and some other realities for us, and that as a people, we find ourselves marginalized also in that system, because as you said, the reality of it is our neighbors with another hue really truly do have a whole different both portal into the system and how the system is navigated. The
Mhm.
reality of it is poor people suffer in the system that's designed to help keep poor people poor, and that's a reality. So as we look at this truth, um, your organization, Community Forgiveness and Restoration, actually has a voice, has put some oomph behind the effort to be able to bring some of these issues not only to light, but to create some change, to create a level playing field, to get our folks back into that. What are some of the things that community forgiveness um, does, presents, offers for our men and women coming home?
Okay. Well, first of all, our focus is to stop the recidivism. And
Mm-hmm.
let me just share a little bit. This program was created by an inmate by the name of Thomas Robinson. He's a person who's serving life, and while incarcerated, he has acquired 2 doctor's degrees, one in theology, one in counseling. And he's a mentor of a lot of men that was in SCI Phoenix. And as a result of him mentoring men, they would go home. There were some that went home, but then they came back. And so he did a 2-year research on why they were coming back. And what he found out was that when they came home, they didn't have the wherewithal to know where to get a job. They didn't have clothing to wear to a job. They didn't have the skills to know how to interview. And some of them had problems with housing. So he took them 2 years to put this program together. And then he called different ones. I'm sorry. Oh, maybe I can just turn it all the way down, right? Yeah, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It happens. We're okay.
Okay. All right. So what he did is he came up with this program, Community Forgiveness and Restoration. And he put some folks together, some clergy people, some professional people, and lay people as well. And so what we started doing is going up to the prison for 12 to 16 weeks. With meeting with about 30 guys. And he was basically the facilitator. We went up there to support what he was doing. Plus, we were connected with the folks who were in his class, and they were people who were going to be coming home within 2 years. And so we listened to their traumas, we listened to their fears, and we listened to their secrets, as well as teaching them the human development as well as spiritual development, because this is a faith-based program. So for those, what we were doing was becoming very popular in terms of the resources that we were providing them. So we started having workshop at Temple University for people who were coming out of other institutions, and we opened it up to women. So what we do is we help them through our workshops. We help them with housing, jobs, transportation, counseling. We help them with resources. For instance, one of our returning citizens, he is one of a shining star. He's now working for community college, and he's a supervisor over a department that provides free college associate's degree for returning citizens, free. And that's a plus. And then we have many, many other resources for them. We even help them with therapy within themselves, so that they could, decompress and get the mindset of being incarcerated out of them. We offer them counseling. We offer them computer lab. But I think the best part of our program is that after they complete the 6 weeks, they receive a life coach, and that's someone who walks with them, someone who calls them on a weekly basis, and if there's any issues that the life coach cannot handle, he brings it before the executive board and also the board, and we do give them a little stipend too at the end of the workshop. So we have an attorney to come in. We have a relationship with probation and parole, and they computer lab, and then jobs and housing. I mean, and we're right in the midst of a workshop now at Temple for 6 weeks on Saturdays. So it's been very successful. We have a graduation, and it's just been a blessing. And
I
that's part
appreciate
of what
that.
we do. That's part of what we do.
Yeah, that's part of what you do. Because even as I was made aware, I'm a person that has facilitated reentry for several years, quite a few years. And um, when I started hearing about the things that your organization does, it made my heart happy because it is so. These wraparound services have to be included in in reentry real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
My history started as a child growing up in Philly, where my mother's two first cousins, one on her father's side, one on her mother's side, were habitually incarcerated.
Okay.
And they would go, be gone 4 or 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years. We were always told they were in the military or college as kids.
Yeah.
But when they would come home to my grandmother or her sister, and so they would come to their mom and their aunt's house, and those big-hearted women who loved their family really didn't have answers for what was causing recidivism. They couldn't address these things, and so that really was my drive in life to be able to. That was the first halfway house I saw, was my grandmother's house for my mother's cousin. And so many times the efforts and the energies are well intended but ineffective simply because we don't really understand the nature of what's going on. How does, and you mentioned that, so I just want to tap back into that with community forgiveness and restoration, the front end part of reentry. My thought always is reentry starts at the time that you're sentenced. It begins there. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the work that's being done inside with the visitations, what could you dig into a little more for us? What happens once you go inside and you're having those conversations? How do you connect with the prisons themselves? Get the programs.
Okay, you froze a little bit, so I didn't hear the last part of it. I'm sorry.
I, it's okay. Those relationships that you build with the prisons
Mm-hmm.
when you go in.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can hear me, but you froze. If I know that you can hear me, then I can try to address the question. Oh Lord, I lost them. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but you
All
froze and
right.
then you went away. So you want to
I,
know about how we develop those relationships
yes.
with the well, as I said, I've been going into SCI Phoenix and some of the other institutions for about 20 years. And when I started, I was the office manager for a state representative. So I kind of was able to get a clear understanding of the halfway houses, of the probation and parole department, and also for the different institutions. And in many cases, I had to fight for inmates that wrote letters that had issues with the institutions. So when it came about for this particular program to happen in Graterford, we had already had a relationship with the superintendent. And the blessing in Graterford is that they were allowing these different initiatives to take place. And that's how it started with the state representative. Because, a state representative can go into any state prison at any time of the day or night. If a family member says that my child's life is in jeopardy, they can just walk in. So I was privileged to be able to work for an elected officials that kind of taught me the ropes. However, we had to sign paperwork, we had to get clearances in order to be able to go inside the prison and go into a classroom and work with these 30 individuals that were vetted from the inside, because we have a team of folks on the inside, chaired by Thomas Robinson. And that's how we got things started. But as I said before, we listened to their fears, their traumas, and also their secrets. And some of their secrets, they were holding in for a long time. And I believe a lot of those secrets caused them to act out, especially at a younger age, and develop that wrong thinking when there was no adult around. Case in point, young man was in his 30s. But from the time he was 5 to 12, his father rented him out to the father's brother, who was a pedophile, and the father was on drugs. So, when you have that going on in your life, you don't have the natural way of thinking, or the natural way of processing of how you're supposed to think and to live with other people. And so there was no other adult there to help him through that trauma that he experienced. And we've heard a lot of stories. So with that, we were able to help them to deal with the negativity that took place in their lives. And we were able to talk to them about healing. And then we talked to them about a 5-year business plan. We talked about where they wanted to live. So we talked about things that we thought that would help them to not only to grow, but to be whole. And again, it was a faith-based organization. So we talked about faith as well,
Thank
whether
you.
it's Christian or Muslim or whatever, you know.
So two thoughts here, and I appreciate that. One, so we're watching so many of our juveniles go into systems, go in and out. I speak to and have spoken to many of our friends that work at the youth justice system in Philadelphia. Are there any plans to expand services to connect with our younger kings and queens coming in and out of incarceration? That's the first thing I'd like to ask. And the second thing, bringing a faith community together is not always the easiest thing.
Mm-hmm.
You found a way, you and the organization found a way to do it. How was that done? Because it's always marvelous to see, because there's so much power when that happens. It's not just churches. Again, it's our Islamic brothers and sisters or other faiths to be able to come together to see a common cause. So first, with our juveniles, any plans to extend services, and then second, how did you get the faith community to galvanize?
Okay, very good. Now, with all of these different initiatives that I've been blessed to be a part of, one of them was the FACT program, Fathers and Children Together. One of the young men who was a part of the program went through it twice. And when he came out, he was so good at communicating that he came out and he was teaching the principles of how to be a father. Because so many of the men that were inside, they didn't know what it meant to have a father in a home. So this particular young man, and I say that to say we partner with a lot of other organizations to take a big bite out of this big giant elephant. Okay. And so he's one of my, he calls me Mama Penny, but he's one of our folks that we've sewn into, who has a program called NOMO. I don't know if you ever heard of it. But there's a program out there where he and another young man who is a returning citizen, they work with over 200 throwaway kids, at-risk kids that have not been going to school, kids who are delinquent in so many ways. And so we have partnered with them, and they have been such a blessing to work with these kids, to help these kids to become whole. They've been fathers to them. And, there was an incident when somebody was hurt, somebody was shot, which was really crazy. Well, they brought all those kids in and they counseled them and they listened to them. They listened to their fears. Now, if you think about it, when you think about that other community, and we've heard about a lot of school shootings, you hear immediately that the counselors are sent right in. You don't hear that in our community. Okay. One of the things that Mr. Thomas Robinson said, it appears that somebody looked at our communities, the ones that were successful, and they systematically removed things that would help us to be successful. And I'm talking about the father in the home, perhaps the mother in the home, a decent school, the sports, the music, all the things that would help our young people to be whole as they grow. And so we have partnered with, and we support them with their programs with the young people. With our program, we want returning citizens from state institutions, male and females, because when they come home, they need help so that they can take care of their families. So that, and we've worked with initiatives to teach them how to be fathers. We work with the mothers to help them to co-parent with the fathers who are incarcerated or even who are home at this time. So that's what we've done. Now, the next question is about the faith, faith community. Our chair and our co-chair, they're both pastors. and they both have successful churches. In fact, our chair is responsible because of the program that he's in for over 400 churches. So he's well acquainted with a lot of pastors. And the back in the day when we were coming up, the pastors were responsible for a lot. They were like the lawyers. They were the kid didn't feel well, the pastor would come over and pray, or if there was problems in the home, call Pastor so and so, for issues. Well, it's not like that anymore, and so but there are some good pastors out there, and they're on board with us. We've got a lot of support from churches as well as from elected officials. So I think people they don't know what the answer. There's so many issues dealing with this criminal injustice. I would just like to say, for first offenders, and I mean, there clearly some people need to be there, and they really need to be there. But there are people who commit a crime first time, and it's not to hurt anyone. And it might even be smoking reefer walking down the street. Perhaps they need to be sent to a rehab, or for first offenders, community service. I mean, there are alternatives than sending folks to prison. When you look at our SCI institutions, state institutions, you see us. You see us there, and you see a handful of other folks, and the other thing too, that there's a problem because they have this thing called time bar. If you are accused and convicted of a crime, and if you can come up with, because some people it's like in a shell shock, but when they're incarcerated, if they're in there over a year and they come up with the evidence to prove that they're innocent, it's a time bar. If they can't get that information within a year, it's like too bad. So the lawmakers know that there are people inside who are innocent, but they don't have a vehicle for them to be exonerated. So, our system is, we need help. One last thing, the more of us that are convicted and that are incarcerated, the more of us are not able to vote. And so who's voting these lawmakers in who are making decisions that's detrimental to our well-being?
That's a strong piece, and it's a piece that we often discuss and talk about, that the strategy to remove the voting rights from men and women who have not only served their time, both in incarceration and their community time, probation, parole, that those rights, to take that right away, you're literally taking away the right of a citizen.
That's right.
Right. And so now, not only do we remove the power of economics, the tax dollar that could help our community, by the menial jobs that are given to men and women returning home from incarceration, who are prepared to do other things, right? Who have put themselves in position to do things that financially enhance their families and community. But also now, by removing the vote, we remove the voice. We literally remove the voice. Absolutely.
That's right.
It's something that we have to be able to address. So I roll with you on that. It's just my little insert. I roll with you definitely on that, because that is a major piece of the rebuilding of our community, to restore the voice of the men and women who are returning back to incarceration. That's something that needs to be fought for. And that other piece is that we need to be able to hold our elected officials accountable. Criminal justice is such a major part of our community as African Americans, as Black people. And if politicians are not talking about criminal justice in a way that restores our men and women coming back in, I can't vote for you. And you shouldn't be receiving our vote because you're not carrying our cause. Where other communities don't have embedded in them this system of criminal justice, we do, because it's designed for us. And so we have to be able to make sure that our elected officials are having conversations that allow our men and women to come out and be able to be involved in society as taxpayers and voters. You want them to be taxpayers. You want that. So if that's the case, then you need to allow them to be voters too, because that's their representation. And we understand as kids at the Boston Tea Party, no taxation without representation. So
Right. The other thing too that's I think that folks were not aware of is that the censors, some people they have the feelings that it's not that important. It's important because that determines how much money is going to come to your city or your state. And what was happening with these prisons in these rural areas, with people with 500 people in the towns, and they have a prison there. Well, what they were doing, were using the number of inmates from Philadelphia, included that in with the censors, and that's called gerrymandering. And what was happening is we were getting less money and they were getting more. So it's like, how many ways can we rob these people called Black? How many different ways can we do it?
And these are the conversations that are hid within the larger conversations, right? So we talk about the first thing is a person comes home and a crime is committed. And so now that whole connection with media and the criminal justice system. So we flash this on and we dig into this person's past record, and we're not advertising or giving media attention to the millions of men and women who come home and do absolutely stellar work in rebuilding life and rebuilding families. And so we create this horror and this fear in community that if you let these people out, this is what's going to happen. When in reality, that is so far from the truth. And so we also have to connect how this thing is conveyed and portrayed to us. Speaking of media, what is the growth potential for community forgiveness and restoration as far as exposure? Are you getting the exposure that you need? Are people telling the stories, those positive stories? Where I'm at, I've heard about what's going on with your organization. So are you getting the attention that you deserve so that you can have the impact that you deserve?
Well, we could use more. About that. We could use more attention and more funding, because it costs money to serve these men and women who are coming home. And so we are reaching out for funding, and we do have a website, community forgiveness and restoration.org. And if anyone wants to donate, they can do that through our website. But we've been, I don't want to say shoestring, because we do have organizations that have been very supportive of us, and they believe that our program is good. And Larry Krasner, he's the DA in Philadelphia. He believes our program is great. We got a state representative, Anthony Williams, and he believes and commits to donating to us, as well as others. But we do need to get the word out even more of what we're doing, and it's really a worthwhile. It's a blessing to see the light turn on in a man's or a woman's eyes when they realize that they're worth it and they don't have to allow their past to dictate their future. One of the good things going on is that they have a new law involving pardons. They don't have to wait 10 years anymore. They don't have to wait till they're 70 to be able to put in for a pardon. And during our workshop for the next six weeks, we're going to find out more detail and what they can do to exonerate. There are some things that are changing, because for so long, people who had a record, they couldn't get a job. And that just added to the problem, because if the judge says that you have to serve a year for your offense, when your year is over, we're going to make them serve another 10 years when they get out by not giving them a chance or not giving them a job. What are we going to do? We don't want them to rob us. We don't want them to reoffend, but they have to live. What are we going to do? So some things are changing, and actually they changed at the state level, because quite a few guys who have come home from being incarcerated for a lengthy period of time, they have state jobs. John Fetterman hired quite a few of them, and I have to commend him for that. Josh Shapiro, I think that he's trying to do better and allowing people to come home. My philosophy is this. You have people who are incarcerated, and when they come up for parole, it's like they're looking at checks in circles, boxes and circles, and that's not a person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't have, to my understanding, information in their records to say this is what they've been doing with their time. This gentleman that created this program, he served over 25 years. He's gone to college to get his doctorate degrees 2 times. And then he's an electrician. He's been offered a job that way, but he's also a jailhouse lawyer where an attorney said that he would hire him to be his paralegal. In fact, he's fought for other people to get out of jail with the video before the judge, you know, and they've gotten out. And so for him to create this program to help people to be successful, you would think that you would want that particular person to come out and to continue his work. Because in most of the programs that we have, you know, a lot of folks don't think very highly of them because people can't relate to them. But as you know, in the folks who have been previous people who were addicted to a substance, they would rather deal with somebody who's already been there and done that. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that in so many ways, we need people who are caring and people who have a vision and people who are not wanting to rob people to continue to rob our people.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Penny, I want to jump in with this part. Peer support is something that I am a firm believer in.
Mm-hmm.
The strength of peer support, of someone's lived experience becoming their resume to be able to help someone with similar lived experience. I'm personally a certified peer support specialist out of the many things that I have going on. And I see the strength of it. I see the strength of peer support as it evolves to help men and women who are who have the lived experience of involvement in the criminal justice system and have survived the incarceration experience. One of my dear friends in Charlotte did 17 on a 25 federal and came out as now one of the foremost spokespersons and drivers of peer support in the Charlotte area. In Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
so we hear we talked about Thomas and we talked about some of the men and women who've come home and their stories. Is there a concerted effort to create some peer support where those who come home are not just embedded in, but they are drivers of effort, that they are drivers of supporting one another? Is that on the table? I know that you've told me the story, so we know that men and women are coming home and they're getting involved. They're not just in something; they're part of this, right? They're signed off and they're giving of themselves. How do we shape the mentorship, the peer support of our men and women so that they can truly dig in and help one another and build that community of men and women coming home from prison? Are you flowing with me on that?
Yes, I would say in Philadelphia, it's a large community of returning citizens that are working to help other returning citizens to be successful and to be whole. Our program is not the only one. There's a plethora of programs out there that's trying. Because see, guess what? We have to be our own cavalry.
Yeah.
You know, we have to be our own cavalry, and we have people that have spent years inside, and they're regretting that some of them are regretting that they're home, and they know that others that's still there are more worthy to be home. You know, so they're working not only to try to bring them home, but they're working with those who are coming home. So I believe that there is attitude in our community of folks who want to support other people who are incarcerated and not looking down on them. And I think that the conversation is changing out there somewhat. I really do. Because people are coming home. You know, if you hire someone who's a returning citizen, they tend to work harder. You know, so they're kind of building up the reputation, you know, that it's okay to hire a returning citizen. But then there are still those who refuse people who have are returning citizens.
And we have to, and thank you for that. We have to be able to make sure we're promoting those benefits, those tax incentives that come with being able to hire returning citizens. And one of the things I used to say when we had the transition program for our men and women coming out, because of the way the program was shape, our folks had the support. Our people had the support. They had urinalysis in our program, so we're bringing you someone who's drug and alcohol free. They attended their support meetings, so we have people who have the supports and have built out. We have education programs, so we're providing you people who are building life capacity, and so we're bringing you the best of your employees. We're bringing you an employee. This group of people have put themselves in position to be the best employees you would ever have. And so this is a pool of people who could enhance companies. So loving that. So Penny, as we begin to put the plane in the hangar, if there were, well, we talked about funding, and we know we definitely need legislation that is supportive, that is not biased, but is actually impactful to help continue to initiate and move change forward for men and women coming home from incarceration. If you had to pick three things of emphasis, this is Penny's list to say that these things must happen for our men and women to be successful coming back home. What would those three things be?
Okay, good question. I would say programs like ours, of course, and that they need to be funded. But I would say it needs to be a plan for people who are coming home on a much larger scale that deals with their needs to survive, and that's housing and jobs, and the third one would be a change of justice system, so that it would be more level playing ground in terms of the probation and parole, in terms of how people are being monitored. And so I guess I could get more in depth in it if I had spent more time in thinking of it, and I'd be able to write down some statistics and things of that nature. But I would say the economic development for people coming home. When you think about folks who are coming from other countries, and I'm not going to say who these folks are, but they're being taught how to open up a business here, and they're getting a 5-year tax-free, to open up their business, and they don't have to pay taxes for 5 years, and that's offered to them. But we have people who live here who have invested in the economic system, and they have families, and they can't get a break like that, And so I would say the economics here for folks that they would get paid, guarantee a job when they came home, and they would get paid a minimum of $15 an hour so that they could be able to afford where they live, and that would stop recidivism there, So those were the three, and I'm sorry I'm not going more in depth.
That's okay. I'm gonna have you back. So this is definitely a conversation that continues, because it's so, you and I use the same terminology, that big elephant, and it's so much of that elephant, and so it's so much to discuss. But we chip away, we take a bite at a time. My guy Ted Houston jumps in and just asks this question. Here's his comment: what vehicles are in place to connect inmates close to coming out with those who can help them to integrate back into a caring community and find employment? Seems there are barriers to building such relationships due to restrictions put on those works. What do you think about the comment here, Penny?
Okay, now I keep going back to my organization, but there are other organizations that are actually going into. I know SCI Phoenix, and because of the fact that we have some institutions that are in rural areas and they're pretty much dominated by LGBTQ, those people are not receiving too much of anything. But I know that the SCI Phoenix and Chester and some of the institutions that are not too far away from Philadelphia, we have people actually going in, making connections with them on a much larger scale. I mean, they got Real Street Talk, it's an organization. They got the NAACP, and they have folks to come in. And so as far as Philadelphia and some of the state institutions that are surrounding a Philadelphia area, there is a large amount of community people who are actually going in and starting relationships with them, and with large groups of people, so that when they come home, they have a safe place to land. And so that's what we're trying to do. But there are many, many other organizations that are doing the same thing.
Absolutely, and that's that piece, um, that connection, because there are many organizations in all areas of community development, rebuilding community, loving community. We don't get to hear about them a lot, but there's a lot of work out there. And so if we can always be able to shed light so that people can know that there are resources. So Penny, I just want to hit us with this last one. Um, I'm a firm believer that the criminal justice system, as ill as it is, does its intended job, which is to house and punish people who have been convicted by courts. So for me, that means that anytime that there are programs rather in prisons and in jails, that's a caveat, that's a cherry on the cake. But in reality, it's not designed for that. Rehabilitation is not really the purpose of prison. I've always felt that it's the community's responsibility to fix communities so that our men and women, when they come home, can be in something different, seeing something different. So it's a dual work that, as we're supporting, I think community should follow our men and women because they're still part of community. So we take what they need, but we also have to build community. For us, Penny, what do we do in our community? And I know it's brief. We're about to put the plane in the hangar, but what do we do for our community so that our men and women coming home have a better shot? We put the onus on our kings and queens coming home, but we still have a responsibility as a community to provide the best opportunity for them to succeed. What do we do in order to continue to help those who are coming home find a place that is ready for them to be successful?
Well, I think that if more churches got involved for mentoring, for welcoming them home, helping them with the healing process, and helping them with positive input. I think we have churches on every corner, and they deal with the little small group, or if they deal with the large churches, they have more resources for them. I think that would impact folks who are coming home. I think that the ministers who are mandating they're supposed to be making disciples, and the disciples are to make other disciples, right? But I think that's, if I was to say the one major organization that I think would make an even bigger impact on those coming home and those who are inside, would be the churches and the imams or the mosques. I really do think that would be a connecting force where people would feel connected. And so we're not a church, but that's what we do. We go inside and we connect inside. So when they come home, the relationship is already established. And because of our resources that we have welcoming them home, we provide that for them. But not only do we provide it for them, but we give them a life coach. We give them somebody who's going to walk with them, they can talk to, connect with them, and when they're hurting, that person can counsel them or even meet a need. So that's what we're doing. And we're hoping that, the other thing I wanted to say, I like coaches, after they go through the program and they're successful for a certain period of time, they become life coaches. And so that's how we grow the program, and that's how we don't burn out what we have. But they become life coaches, and that's our goal, to continue to feed, and then make them whole, and then they can go back and feed somebody else. So it's like what is it called? Go forward, or I never get them sayings right.
You pay it forward.
Pay forward. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And that's so inspiring, because the duplication of self is how we now really start taking large bites. Here we go again, out of that elephant, right? Because where I bit, now that I've come out and I've duplicated myself in someone else, now we got two people biting, and then now that person, so and on and on. So I appreciate that. Penny, I thank you for your time. I really do. I thank you for answering the invite. I hope to have you back on with other conversations with some of the other topics. I do want to ask you this. So for you, with all the things that you do, and you shared some of those things with me yesterday, you
Yeah.
got your hands on quite a few things, right? There's a lot of moving parts for you. Penny, how do you find self-care to avoid burnout, to avoid exhaustion? How do you reboot so you can keep showing up for the community the way that you do?
Well, the blessing is that I'm retired. So
Okay.
that's so that's a good thing. But the joy that I get out of what I do, it takes the stress away. Now I am the chair of a party, of
Mm-hmm.
a political party. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another piece that we can talk about another time. But this
Yes.
particular work, by going back and forth for 20 years, I shared with you, I've developed relationships and I've seen people grow. That just blesses me. So what I do, I didn't tell you that I have my own band and I'm a drummer.
No, you didn't.
Yes, you can go on YouTube, Soul on Demand, and you'll see some of our performances. But
Okay.
I do that, and then I'm also a certified counselor, a biblical counselor. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm involved in quite a few things. Plus, with 19 grandchildren, so I have a full life. The Lord has just truly blessed me, and I do get my rest,
Yeah.
and I do some exercise too. So
Okay. I
that's
often ask my folks that because we talk with and spend time with a lot of people who do a lot of things, a lot of energy, a lot of love in the community. And
uh-huh.
we have to make sure that we're putting ourselves in position to be the best that we can for others while
Yeah.
being the best that we can for ourselves. So I thank you. I thank you for that. Penny, it has been a pleasure. It has been a treat. Please make sure when you see this, whenever it is, whether it's tonight, whether it's later, that you share this on your social media platform. You can always come to the North Philly Project Facebook page to be able to see any of our conversations, or go to our YouTube channel, like the page, subscribe to the channel. I've been chatting with um, Penny McDonald,
Yes.
Executive Director of Community Forgiveness and Restoration. Magnificent work being done. Penny, would you give us the website again, please?
Yes, it's community forgiveness and restoration.org.
Thank you so much. Go to the website, get more information, find
Mhm.
out how you can support, find
Mhm.
out how you can give. We're a community. It takes a village. And so we have to be able to support the efforts and energies that are rebuilding people, bringing healing to community, helping us live past and heal from our trauma, and to have the lives that we both desire and deserve. Penny, last words from you for everybody.
Well, I just like to say I thank you so very much for having me on your program. I appreciate the conversation, and I hope that some of the things that we were able to talk about and share would touch someone's heart to want to pay forward. And if you see somebody that's a returning citizen, just to have a kind word to say, or something inspiring or encouraging, and not just look down on a person because they've made a mistake in their lives, because we all have, you know. And so I just thank you, and I hope that you have a blessed life.
Oh, thank you so much. Listen, everybody, we've hung out with Penny McDonald. We thank her for coming on and just sharing. These conversations do continue. These are community conversations exploring life in our marginalized communities, but we talk about how to ignite the social change that allows us to live the lives that we desire and deserve. This is North Philly Project presents Wellness Chronicles. I'm Aaron Wells. On behalf of our guest, Penny McDonald, I wish you a good night, an absolutely great rest of the week. And remember, right, you are the change that you want to see. Everybody's got to get into the ring with this thing. It is worth it. We love you, and we will talk to you later. Have a good one.
Very good.
Bye bye.
Take care.